Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of GeoPod. I'm your host Dylan Woods, and today I'd like to take the time to discuss some of the strategies and methodologies that Iran might adhere to when it comes down to its impending retaliatory attack upon Israel and probably potential US interests. So in the previous clip I already talked a little bit about some of the strategies that I think Iran will opt for when they will launch their retaliation. And my belief is pretty much the same as it was back then, and that is that Iran will most likely adhere to a long-range strategy, meaning they will aim to launch large volleys of rockets, missiles and drones with the aim to overwhelm Israeli aerial defensive systems and strike as many targets as possible. Although I still believe they will adhere to a similar strategy as the one they adhered to in April when they first launched a significant long-range offensive, I still believe they will make some adaptations since last time. So, first and foremost, what I believe we will see is a greater severity in the attack itself, a larger output, meaning more rockets, more missiles, and more drones that will be launched towards the Jewish state. Another thing that they will adhere to, in my opinion, is that those efforts will be more closely coordinated with their proxy militias within the region. So they will aim, most likely, to strike Israel from as many angles and from as many territories as possible. At the same time, I believe Iran was looking to apply more of its naval assets in this attack, meaning it will launch projectiles from its ships, especially those stationed near the Strait of Hormuz. So what we will be seeing here is an assault from various angles, from multiple territories, with the aim to overwhelm, right? I also believe that the targets Iran will select for this offensive will be much more critical and much more potentially damaging. So we will be looking at critical infrastructure within Israel that might be targeted. We will be looking at critical military targets as well as civilian targets. Now, apart from that, I believe the strategy in which they will launch will be accompanied with a lot more cunning, let's say. So, for example, they might make use of diversion, they might delay, they might stall. We might be looking at an extended assault, prolonged over a period of time. So, for example, what that may look like is the following. Iran is going to launch 1 or 2 volleys of rockets and missiles and drones consisting of approximately 100, 150 projectiles each time. Israel will probably eliminate these threats with relative ease, and then might find itself in a position where it's decreasing its awareness, decreasing its readiness, believing the attack, the onslaught to be over. At that point, Iran will launch its full-scale attack, backed up by its proxies within the region. Another thing that we might be looking at, or might potentially be looking at, is the use of decoys and the use of dummies, let's say. So it's a common strategy within the offensive use of ballistic missiles, let's say, to make use of dummy warheads, diversions to obscure and trouble and disorient, let's say, aerial defensive systems. So, for example, an intercontinental ballistic missile carrying nuclear warheads might reach orbit. The moment it launches, it comes back down and it will disperse. It will send dummy warheads along with real warheads to trouble aerial defensive systems and to detract attention away from the real warheads, so giving them a greater probability of striking their target. And I believe we might look at something similar now, where Iran is going to launch dummy projectiles or dummy drones as a means to distract Israeli radars and sensors. So I still believe that this will be the primary strategy and methodology Iran will adhere to. However, there have been other interesting recent developments that I'd like to discuss a little bit more in depth. What we have seen over the past few weeks is a large-scale mobilization of Shia militia troops, especially within Iraq and Syria. Now, we can say this might be part of the impending offensive of Iran towards Israel, right? They're there to mobilize and they're there to enter the fray should Iran call upon them. However, there was another interesting development, and that is a few days ago, officials from Hezbollah, Iran, and the Afghani Fatah Mihun Brigade met in the city of Homs in Syria and discussed there some of their future efforts. According to the rumors and the intelligence we have at our disposal right now, what Iran has probably urged the Fatemiyun brigades to do is move towards the west, link up with Shia militias within Iraq and Syria, and then fully mobilize within the Homs region of Syria, not the city, the region, which is located approximately a little bit closer to the southeast of the country. Now, a little bit of background information here. So the Fatemiyun brigades are part of Iran's proxy network. However, they were erected in 2014 not with the aim to directly challenge Israel or the West, but rather ISIS Khorasan within Afghanistan, hoping, or aiming rather, that their terrorist activities wouldn't spoil within over Iranian borders and cause troubles within Iranian territory. However, recently the Fatemiyun representatives have stated on multiple occasions that they are more than ready to enter the fray against Israel and the West should Iran call upon them. So, by urging them to mobilize towards the Homs region, well, it shows us that they're very likely gonna join any Iranian effort against Israel or the West. And another thing that makes this interesting is that there's another element within the Homs region, namely the Al-Tanf US military base, which is one of the few remaining US bases within Syria. The Al-Tanf base, the purpose of the Al-Tanf base was originally to combat elements of ISIS and later to counter the spread of pro-Iranian militias within Syria and Iraq. And as of right now, I believe it consists of approximately 900 special operations personnel. Now, in the past, there have been exchanges between the base and Shia militias, as well as the base and the Syrian armed forces. Now, Iran understands that US influence within the region is waning. Iraq is urging the US to move out, wishing to gain full responsibility for its own security. Even in Syria, there are plans to further decrease US military presence and personnel. So Iran understands that the time to launch such a bold strike upon a US military base is right now. The problem is that what we're seeing right now is mobilization of boots on the ground, let's say. So usually when we're talking about a long-range campaign, which relies upon the use of missiles, rockets and drones, the large mobilization of troops isn't necessarily necessary, right? What's more necessary is the mobilization of launch systems, delivery systems, spreading them out as far as possible, creating multiple angles of attack, making it harder for the opposition to launch any form of preemptive strike upon them. But what we're seeing now is a large-scale troop mobilization within Syria and Iraq. So, which means that we might look at another potential threat, which is that Iran aims to strike the US Al-Tanf base directly, or potentially any other remaining US military base within either Iraq or Syria. And we must understand, we must realize that US military bases have been attacked on a regular basis ever since the war between Hamas and Israel broke out. Even before, from 2017 up until 2023, there are countless of incidents involving Shia militias targeting US military bases, as well as elements within the Syrian armed forces doing the same. Now, Iran has stated that it holds the US as much responsible as Israel to the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh and any Israeli campaign within the region. They've also made it known that they aim to strike US interests as part of their retaliatory campaign. So again, what we will potentially be looking at is a large-scale offensive, not just on Israel alone, but also the Al-Tanf military base, which resides in Homs, the same place Iran has urged its Shia militias, backed up by the Fatemiyun brigades, to mobilize in. So what the Al-Tanf base might potentially be looking at here is that they will not only be attacked by projectiles, but also by direct raids executed from various angles and probably even backed up by the Syrian military. Now, depending on that initial success, Iran might aim to take over the base entirely, push US personnel out there, and conquer the base, delivering a devastating blow against US influence within Syria. So, to summarize, I believe Iran is eager to make this retaliation as severe as it can possibly make it, with the aim to show its fangs and to install back their deterrence, let's say. However, on the other hand, it also realizes that in the most probable case, any retaliatory effort it executes will be met by an even greater one from Israel and the United States. So now that we've talked about some of the strategies and methodologies that Iran might adhere to, let's talk about what Israel, the US, and its Arab neighbors can do to counter this Iranian impending threat. So what we've seen over the past few days is that Israel and the United States are posturing up, right? There's a huge increase of reconnaissance flights over Syrian territory, over Yemeni territory, and pretty much across the entire Middle East. The USS Theodore has entered Mediterranean waters, an aircraft carrier backed up by 4,000 Marines, just in case the US needs to respond more severely towards any Iranian aggression. Now Israel has done the same. All of its forces are on high alert, its defenses are ready, and it says it's fully prepared for any Iranian aggression whatsoever. On the other hand, we have Jordan, who have claimed that any Iranian missiles or projectiles that enter its airspace will be shot down immediately. So Israel, the US, and their allies are prepared, right? This won't be a surprise attack. They're ready, they're postured up. However, now the question becomes, if we know that our enemies are about to launch probably the most severe attack it has ever launched against us, what are we to do? Are we to stand idly by, assess the damage after it is done, and then decide our next move? Or do we realize that at this point, escalation is almost inevitable, or at least a hell of a lot likelier than de-escalation? And should we prevent, or mitigate rather, the threat that our enemies pose to the furthest extent possible? So in such a scenario, we might be looking at a preemptive strike. And that's not as far-fetched as you might think. I mean, Israel has done similar offensives in, let's say, the Six-Day War, for example, where an impending threat was upon them, an impending attack was upon them, and they took out the threat beforehand, winning the war, winning the conflict relatively easily. And they might adhere to a similar strategy here in this situation, granted that they have the diplomatic and military backing to do so. So one of the scenarios we might be looking at is that we will see a joint preemptive strike executed primarily by the US and Israel, maybe backed up by elements from the UK and Jordan, which will be aiming to neutralize as many Iranian launch sites as possible, as many Iranian missile depots and delivery systems as possible, neutralize their nuclear facilities, and possibly, potentially, cut off the head of the snake, strike Tehran, and take out the Ayatollah regime, opening up a dialogue in its aftermath with its newly elected president. Now, although such a strategy might seem radical, we have to understand that escalation is imminent. Iran says it's gonna attack, and that its attack is gonna be more severe than anything it has ever launched against the Jewish state. So as we are Israel, you have to look upon this as a grave, if not existential threat. So are you gonna wait and guess, let's say, that your defensive systems are so far advanced as opposed to them that you will be able to easily neutralize over 90% of their offensive campaign? Well, then you might take a step back and opt for that choice. On the other hand, your civilians are threatened. They have been threatened constantly ever since the Hamas terrorist attacks on October the 7th. Hezbollah has launched daily missiles, rockets and drones within your northern borders, forcing your civilians to evacuate their homes. So between 60,000 and 80,000 Israeli civilians hailing from the north of Israel haven't been allowed to return to their homes ever since the start of the Israeli-Hamas war. So the preemptive option is definitely on the table, and this is what it primarily will look like. If the Israeli military and the United States should opt for this strategy, the most important thing they need to focus on is defanging the snake, if you will, meaning neutralize the Iranian missile capability and long-range capabilities to the furthest extent possible, as well as delivering a crushing, crippling blow against his nuclear program, and to the furthest extent cutting off the entire head of the snake, opting for a regime change, which of course will be a very delicate matter diplomatically. Another option that Israel and the United States have at their disposal is, like I said before, wait how much damage the Iranian retaliation is actually going to do, and then take it from there. Israel has already said, regardless of any Iranian aggression, we're going to respond, right? So in that case, their response will depend on the severity of Iran's retaliatory attack in the first place. What do these two scenarios have in common? Both of them are escalatory. Meaning we have arrived at a point within the Middle East that escalation in one form or another is impending. The time for diplomacy is over. It has been tried, Iran has made it known, it will not listen, it is not ready to listen, it is not ready to oblige. It is gonna attack. So then, as Israel and the United States, you're left with two options. Call their bluff, or see the threat for what it is, and defang it preemptively. We have to understand Iran's mindset. We have to understand Iran's ideology. The ambition of the Ayatollah regime is singular in its purpose. Destruction of Israel. That's its end goal. It's the reason why they have created its proxy networks, why they have created countless of Shia militias, and why they have continuously supported, financed, and armed them. It's the reason why they have started their nuclear program in the first place. To achieve nuclear weapons capability, eventually place a nuclear weapon in the hands of one of their proxies, which will then be used against Israel with the aim to annihilate it. The same counts for Western interest within the region. Iran aims to cleanse any US or Western presence within the Middle East, eliminate them from the region, and install a deterrent so that they may never return again. That's the aim of Iran. It understands that sooner rather than later, it's gonna confront the West. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So when you're Israel, when you're the United States, you wish such a conflict to occur on your terms. When you have the superiority, when you're stronger, and when you have the momentum. These are my thoughts on the subject. I thank you all for listening to this clip. If you wish to leave a comment, please feel free to do so in the comment section below. If you wish to engage in some sort of discussion with me, please feel free to reach out to me. I get back to you as soon as possible. Leave a like underneath this clip. Please subscribe to my channel. I'm looking to disseminate more content here in the near future. Once again, thank you very much and have a blessed day. Thank you.